Good afternoon, sir. Honorable VC, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Shall I start, sir?
Yeah, please, please. If Srinath sir is ready, we can go ahead.
Sure, sir. Srinath, sir, shall I begin? Sir, you're on mute, audio mute.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I'm Jasma Balasangameshwara from the Department of Computer Science and Technology, School of Engineering, Dayananda Sagar University. On behalf of Dayananda Sagar University and Board for IT Education Standards, it is my honor to welcome our speaker, Shriji Srinath sir, former Strategic Accounts Director, Europe Tata Consultancy Services. It is my great pleasure to welcome the delegates from various organizations. I heartily welcome the members of BITES and its associated institutions, and a warm welcome to my colleagues and students. I request Shri S. Vinod sir, Chief Executive Officer, Atal Innovation Foundation at Dayanand Sagar University, to please introduce the speaker to the audience.
Thank you, madam. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. So today we have a very interesting session on journey towards entrepreneurship. And it gives me immense pleasure to introduce the speaker, Mr. Srinath, who was formerly Strategic Accounts Director Europe at Tata Consultancy Services. Mr. Srinath has done his engineering from Bangalore University, and he's from IIM Ahmedabad, class of 1984. So he has close to 35 years of work experience, wherein he has worked with large corporates, SMEs, and he has also been self-employed. He has worked across several industries, including IT, FMCG, and management consulting. Mr. Srinath has also worked across different areas, including sales, marketing, new product development, supply and strategy. In fact, he's a firm believer and very passionate about using IT and technology for solving problems. His recent interests have also revolved around Indian culture and societal behavior, as well as stock markets. We welcome you, sir. And with this, I hand it over to Mr. Srinath for the interesting session on journey towards entrepreneurship.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate the fact that you're spending a good part of a very interesting Friday afternoon. Of course, with the lockdown, Friday afternoons will be restricted to TVs and home, I guess. Nevertheless, I appreciate so many of you spending time in trying to get some useful information. I hope that I will be able to give you some useful information and some tips on what is the journey towards an entrepreneurship. If you will see the title, I have said that this is a journey. Now, why do I call it as a journey? Oh, okay. Before that, thank you very much to the organizers, BITES, Dayanand Sagar University people, for giving me this opportunity. Also to my ex-colleague Arvind Srinivas for having given me this wonderful opportunity to interact with you people. Now, the title is, I had to think a lot before I could actually arrive at this title, The Journey Towards Entrepreneurship. As you would have seen from my bio, I've had a stint in entrepreneurship. It did not work out well. And then I joined the corporate world. I joined TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. But even there, I was involved with the innovation and the TCS R&D labs. And therefore, it was some kind of a continuation of what I was earlier on doing. So to that extent, it was a sort of continuation, you could say. Now, why do I call this as a journey? Because by experience, both self-made as well as by observing others, I do know that this is a long and continuous journey. It's sort of a winding, it's looping, it takes you through several missteps, it takes you through several wrong directions before you actually arrive at a satisfied state. That's why I called it as a journey. It's like what you see, what happens when you actually try to take on a train journey as a very simple example. We'll have several stops along the way. Some of them will be unscheduled, some of them will be longer stops, and that's where it ends. Or some of them will carry on. Now, why is it that it has got this kind of a nature? One reason is that there is a change in your vision itself. A lot of people start off with thinking that they would proceed in a particular direction or towards a particular objective and on a particular path to achieve that particular objective. But then they find out that there is a change in the landscape, there's a change in the environment, external environment, there's a change in the government regulations, there's a change in technology, there's a change in your own vision of what happens in the future. Nobody expected that electric vehicles would come into the road and would be such a fast development. An example. So people who were slow, the conventional automakers were caught with the pants down when it came to competition from the likes of Tesla. So it could also happen that there is a change in the team. Your companions no longer share the same vision that you have, or they no longer have the same kind of uh, path. They no longer share your path, and so they would like to go their own way. If you're familiar with the story of Infosys, you would know that amongst the original founders, one of them actually quit TCA, quit Infosys even before it became big, and he set off on his own path in between. So there are things like this that happen, and you will have to sort of adjust your way according to these things. And that's why I called it as a journey. So what is this journey about? It all starts with the primary motivation. What is your primary motivation? I have identified two kinds of sources of primary motivation. One will be internal. Some people like to be independent, like to be their own boss. They don't like the idea of being in a 9 to 5 situation, being required to report to somebody, being required to take approvals. They believe that they can do things better, they can do things differently, they can do things faster. So it does strike a discordant note in you after some time. Then you begin to wonder, why am I doing all this for somebody else? Why can't I do the same thing for myself? Or why can't I use my capabilities for myself and then earn better results or better fruits? Some people see challenges around them, they see problems, they see the opportunity to innovate, and then they say, okay, let me take this up independently. I cannot do it under the present circumstances when I am working with an organization. There is also a hunger to do something serious in life, to contribute to society. And that's a very, very powerful motivator. Many of us see a lot of things which need to be changed from a societal perspective, and they decide to actually act upon it. It could be in the area of politics, it could be in the area of social change, it could be in the area of solving a health problem, it could be in the area of solving a money problem, it could be any area. Now, these are the internal ones. But there are some external considerations also. Some of us are privileged and have the benefit or have the opportunity to take over a family business, in which case, he or she becomes an entrepreneur, maybe unwittingly at an early age, much earlier than planned, or maybe by design. There is also the question of money. There are many people who believe that by working on your own, you can earn much more money than what you are earning today. There's also the possibility of becoming getting social status and then earning prestige as a self-employed person, as an entrepreneur. But generally what I found is the two things that I found from all these motivators. One is that the internal drive motivators tend to be much, much stronger than the external drive motivators. They tend to lead you to a much higher level plane of thinking and activities than what you would do if you were to be motivated primarily by external. After all, after a certain period of time, you will realize that money has got its own limitation. You can earn about 10 crores, and then you can earn about 100 crores, you can earn about maybe a little more than that, but then you realize that your basic needs and wants are the same, and they have not expanded as much as what opportunities you see or what kind of earnings you're able to get or what kind of pleasures you're able to earn. So if you are motivated by an internal factor, then you tend to do a lot more in terms of scale, in terms of vision, in terms of the level of contribution that you have rather than by external drive. This is what I found. Now, one of the things that I've noticed when people talk about entrepreneurship is they look at the likes of Bill Gates, they look at the likes of Steve Jobs, or they look at the likes of Dhirubhai Ambani and then Mukesh Ambani back home, or many other people around them who have achieved considerably good amount of fame and a very, very high level of status in society. But then I've always been thinking, is it necessary for you to always think along that scale or not? What is the path that you need to take in order to achieve that? Is it possible to go there directly? Well, not really. Like I mentioned earlier, family business is one way in which you can become an entrepreneur. But then not all of us are privileged to have a business background. Business is a relatively new concept to many families in India, and hence that has got a very limited potential. That's got a limited window for many of us. What is the next thing that happens whenever somebody thinks about entrepreneurship? I think what they really mean is self-employment. You can be self-employed, then you can graduate to become a businessman or a businesswoman, as the case may be. You can become an entrepreneur as the next step. And the fourth step, I would say, is that of an industrialist. By the way, these days, there is the concept of an intrapreneur. I'm not sure how many of you know, but corporates do give you the privilege, give you the opportunity to develop independent businesses within the framework of the organization. Earlier, it used to be that if you want to start something on your own, if you have a business idea, then you would have to quit the company and then start something on your own. But these days, companies are encouraging their employees to start businesses of their own within the boundaries of the parent organization. Of course, there are limitations to that, which we'll probably discuss a little later. One is that it has to be linked to the primary business of the organization. If it is showing some good business benefit to the to the parent organization, then they're willing to support you for that. Now, when I have spoken about 4 ways in which you can become an entrepreneur, you can start with being self-employed, you can go to becoming a businessman or a businesswoman, and then you can become an entrepreneur, and then you can become a really big entrepreneur, or you can become what I loosely called as industrialist. Oh, by the way, all these terminologies, most of these terminologies, I would say, have been developed by myself for this presentation, solely for this presentation. So the language is my own. So I have taken some liberties in coining phrases or in coining labels and then using them here. For instance, if you see that the last step that I identify in being an entrepreneur is that of an industrialist. Now, what is the difference? And why is it? Well, before that, let me explain to you. Let me tell you why is it that I identified these 4 stages. One is that the skill mix that you require in order to master each one of these stages or in order to reach one of these stages is quite different. It involves a lot of development, lot of personality development, lot of skill development on your own, on the person side, on the person who's trying to become the entrepreneur, in order to go from stage to stage. Of course, it's not always necessary that you start off from the bottommost stage and then go on to the topmost stage. But for the purpose of this discussion, I have made it phase wise. It makes it that much more easier. For instance, the most common example that I could give of somebody passing on from one phase to another phase would be that of, since all of you are engineers, I thought I should take the example of an engineer. You start off as engineers. Maybe you start off as a graduate engineer in an organization. You'll move up to become a team leader or a project leader. That is when most times the dissonance or the dissatisfaction with you sort of takes an active shape, and then helps you to identify your or to give vent to your entrepreneurial instincts. And that's when you think of becoming self-employed. Now you can become a self-employed consultant. You can offer your services for others for as a freelancing agent or as a consultant, which is typically what a lot of people do. Then you realize after some time that, hey, this has again got limitations of its own, and I'd like to start a business. I'd like to start a small consulting firm where I will have a small team and I will handle both the technical and the ops management. And there will be limited amount of risks involved, but I will be able to cover that. My involvement or your involvement as a businesswoman, a businessman would be mostly into operations and a little bit on the external side, because you will have to be customer facing, you will have to find customers, you will have to deal with bankers or with financial institutions or with financiers, as the case may be. So to that extent, you have a very limited vision. You want to start off with a consulting company, and then that's what you've done. And what is the CI factor that I have there down at the risk down at the list of factors? It is the constant improvement or the constant innovation factor. But the two stages that I've outlined so far, one is that of a self-employed person, as well as the next one being that of a businessman person. Uh, by the way, I'm using the term businessman in a strictly generic form. I do not want any gender aspersions to be cast on me, please. I just take note of that. Now, there comes a time when you are a businessman and then you have a thriving business, but then you feel consulting is not enough. You need to build a product, you need to build a platform, you need to do something which is much bigger in scale, which moves you on to, you see enough opportunities, then you seize that opportunity, and then you become a true entrepreneur, where you will be getting the work done through your teams. You will have multiple teams, you will have technology teams, you will have a finance team, perhaps you'll be get involved in different aspects like communication both internal as well as external. And then you will have to do a hell of a lot of networking with society, networking with customers, again networking with technology partners, networking with various other societal people. And then when you are really big enough to start multiple such businesses, multiple locations, perhaps you will add some kind of a development center, or you'll add manufacturing facilities of your own. And then you expand your operations to multiple areas, multiple geographies, multiple domains, multiple industries. Then you truly become what I call as an industrialist. You can understand that the size and the scale of the operations are far, far different and far, far higher as you go from one phase to another phase. There is a third factor that I have mentioned here, which talks about the key skills required. Before that, maybe a more down-to-earth example, I did think about it, but when I discuss it with my sons, both my sons are engineers, by the way, and they have put in about 5 to 7 years experience. working in the corporate sector, both of them. When I was discussing about their own aspirations, their own ideas about what is it that they want to do, they suggested that I give the example of an engineer. But then on a more down-to-earth scale, if you look at what happens in a non-technical person's career path, he starts off with an executive in an organization, perhaps in sales, perhaps in production, perhaps in logistics, uh, perhaps in accounts. There are also people who are accountants. Then he graduates to a medium level, and then he starts his own consulting firm. But then he then decides to add on multiple products to his portfolio and perhaps becomes a dealer of a well-known brand, a franchise of a well-known brand. That is how he becomes a businessman or a business person. And then he adds on multiple businesses to his portfolio, to his livelihood, and then blossoms to offering livelihood to others, and transforms himself into an entrepreneur. That's a more what should I say, down to earth example of how the career path happens towards entrepreneurship. Yes, I was speaking to you about the key skills that are required. As you can see, at the bottommost level, you require something which is mostly technical, mostly mechanical, something which is academic rather, and a bit of pragmatism involved. But then when you come to being a businessman or the next stage, you need to have all of this. Plus, you need to have a little bit of business management capabilities, or ops management mostly. Ops is operations, by the way. Operations are day-to-day operations, not really so much on the strategic side. You don't really think too much about what kind of customers you want. This is the customer that you want to go after. You limit yourself to a physical proximity generally, or you limit yourself to an industry boundary. So you do have very limited amount of work to be done in on the strategic side. If you come to the next phase, the next level, that of an entrepreneur, that's me having a sip of water, in case you're wondering what is that gurgling noise. Okay, you will have to add on a few more things. One is that from a technical person, you will have to become a technologist person. You will not be able to do with just understanding one aspect of technology. Typically, if you're looking at a software company, if you're looking at an IT company, if you're looking at a large, say, engineering company, you need to look at technologies, not technology, which will go into defining your product area, your products, or your technology platforms, whatever. Then you'll be working with larger teams consisting of finance guys, legal guys, patent attorneys. You will be involved with communicating with a large group of people, with a large number of people, perhaps much more than what you would have ever done. You need to communicate not just internally with the different teams of people, conveying to them your vision, conveying to them the ethics of the company, conveying to them the standards of the company, conveying to them what is expected in terms of performance levels, etc., etc. Yeah, this is on one side, and on the other, this is on the internal side, mostly with the employees and the other people that you work with. But on the external side, you'll have to communicate with your shareholders, maybe you will have to communicate with your bankers. And when I say bankers, I don't necessarily mean hardcore bankers. I mean people who put in money, like the VCs. Today you have the concept of venture capitalists, you have angel investors, etc., etc., who need to who need to be communicated with on regular intervals and on key aspects, so on and so forth, right? Then there is the last aspect, which is that of networking that I have written down. There are many more, but then these are the common ones that I have identified. Networking is very important. Networking with your peers. Please keep in touch with your schoolmates, your classmates, your college mates, the people that you meet, make it a point to attend industry seminars, webinars. Make it a point to talk to friends with different viewpoints, talk to industry leaders, talk to people who are society leaders in order to ensure that you're able to get the viewpoints and get the hang of what is happening in society, as well as, there are many helpful people out in the world today. One of the things that I've noticed is there is a very great willingness to help amongst other entrepreneurs. Sorry, the screen sharing has stopped. It says, Jasmine, is there a problem with the screen?
No, sir. So you can again click on the screen share button.
Yes, that I will. Okay, is it all right?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Where was I? I was talking to you about the skills required for being an entrepreneur, and then I was emphasizing the importance of networking. Now, when you become much bigger than this and qualified to become an industrialist, there are two additional things that I've added on, if you notice in the slide. One is vision. You need to be able to have a proper vision of what you want to do, how you want to go about it, what is the kind of stretch that you would like to take, what are the areas that you would like to get involved in. And this is important to communicate this at all levels, both within the organizations and external, repeatedly, so that it sort of gets emphasized. You may have seen in the media that there have been a number of instances where leaders have failed to communicate their vision, and then what has happened as a consequence is that the organizations tend to go astray in their own way. The other aspect that I would like to emphasize is that of social awareness. Industrialists must have what I call as social awareness. It's not enough if you communicate internally as well as externally with your key stakeholders and people who, with your primary stakeholders, I would say. It's also important to be part of society as it is actually is. Today, for instance, with the COVID scare, with the COVID pandemic situation all around, you would notice that there are a number of top-notch industrialists as well as wealthy people, as well as societal people, ordinary people who are getting involved in helping those who are distressed, those who are in need of help. And this is what I mean by saying social awareness. CSR becomes a very important component of your social awareness activities. Jasma, how are we doing on time?
Sir?
How are we doing on time?
Yes, sir. This is a 45-minute session, sir.
This is a 45-minute session. So
Yes.
I need to speed up because I have another, okay, I've done about half the slides. Okay, all right.
Yeah, make it full screen and keep it moving.
Sure. Is it all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Consequent as a consequence of what I just now said, one of the key skills required for the higher levels of becoming an entrepreneur is that of able to that of being able to articulate your vision and being involved at different levels. When I say involvement, if you'll see one of the lines here which talks about how I expect the involvement to happen. As you go higher up, you get more and more involved in strategy, in managerial aspects, external interactions, and lesser in terms of operational involvement, as well as in terms of day-to-day management. If you look at the last line, this is a very important factor. This is what I call as the CI factor. I think I mentioned that briefly a little earlier. This is the constant improvements or the constant innovation. Earlier on, when you actually start off being into self-employed, your constant innovation factor is pretty low. Actually, I've written not required. Innovation is perhaps not required, but improvements are certainly required at all the phases. But as you go higher, you require innovation, you're required to identify sources of information. You need to breed innovation within your organization and also within yourself in order to grow, in order to sustain and really grow big. So now you have the desire to become an entrepreneur. The question that comes up is, how do I actually translate this? How do I actually become an entrepreneur? Where do I start? How do I start? What business area do I pick up? What business do I do? Where is it that I'm likely to succeed? Where is it that I'm likely to risk the least? How to get ideas? Ideas usually come from the problems that you want to solve, or the problems that you notice around you. You wish to offer a better product or service. You think you can develop a better product. You think that you can do a job better. You can do it quickly. You can do it easily. You can make life easy for somebody. You can do a task that others find it difficult to perform and make life easier for people. You take away the trouble out of somebody's problems. Just give me a minute, please. Let me have a glass of water. Are there any questions so far?
No, sir.
Or is it too elementary that you need to have any questions?
No, sir. After the session, we'll have Q&A after your presentation.
Okay. All right. Now you will see some challenges, and then you will feel that you're well equipped in order to face these challenges, in order to find solutions. So that could be one thing. It could be that you see a lot of cost saving. One example that I can think about is what GE, General Electric, did in Bangalore from the Jack Welch Innovation Center. They took upon an ECG machine, then they said, which used to cost lakhs of rupees, which was not easily portable, which was quite bulky in nature, had to be installed only by specialized technical team. They said, we will convert this to a portable ECG machine, which can be carried to distant places, which can be carried to the patient's homes, which can be used much more easily, and which will not have many of the features that the big ECG machines have. There is a trade-off that they had, and they were able to successfully maneuver around that. And they did this primarily with the reason of bringing down the cost and making it more affordable in countries like in the developing countries. Sometimes you'll see that there is a job being done, there is a product available, which takes an enormous amount of effort, and you think that you can save efforts, you can reduce the efforts that is required, you can improve productivity, and then there becomes an idea for you to start a business. And lastly, it saves lives. Supposing you're able to, the idea of using robots for firefighting is one such example. How do you get these ideas? Most often times, I find that people have been able to get ideas from observing what is happening around you, or by experiencing it themselves, or by accidents, of course. What kind of where do you observe? You observe at your workplace. You notice how work is being done. You notice the processes that are being followed. You see that there is a lot of wastage. You see that there is a better way of getting it done. There is a possible time saving involved if people do it in a different way. you're able to make a business out of that, full kudos to you. You will be able to do that. Look at your own customers. And this is something that I have personally experienced myself when I used to interact with multiple customers during the course of both my corporate career and especially in the last one when I spent about 15 years, 16 years at TCS. I have interacted with some of the largest companies in the world in different domains. And I have seen that they have a tremendous amount of problems that they face in their day-to-day work. Uh, Much of it, what I experienced was IT, but it doesn't have to be IT. And if you have good relationship with your customers, then you will be able to hear from them what their problems are. Your own home, you look around you, you will be able to come up with ideas on how to improve your products, how to improve your products you use, how to improve the services that you employ, and see if there is a business opportunity. The next one is my favorite, actually. Movies, books, comics, futurologists. My CTO, Mr. Anant Krishnan, always used to say that he will get a lot of futuristic ideas from watching movies or from reading books and from reading comics. His favorite example was that of Jarvis. If you know Jarvis from the movie series, right? Iron Man series, right? Jarvis is nothing but a software intelligent agent, right, who can do all the work for you. And that's really what artificial intelligence is all about, using artificial intelligence. If you will see the buzz today, it is all about artificial intelligence. And this movie, Iron Man series, was, I think, developed about 20 years ago. That's when he was talking about using artificial intelligence for making, for solving problems. Futurologists, Alvin Toffler. I don't know how many of you have heard of Alvin Toffler. He used to be a futurologist. And remember having read his book when I was in my teens, late teens, perhaps, that is in the early 70s. Alvin Toffler talked about the information wave. He talked about an information overload, which is what seems to be happening today. So if you read all the futurology books, H.G. Wells wrote about making a journey to the inside of the Earth, the space travel, etc., etc. Those are all the things that you can look at, you can dream about, and then perhaps uh, actually implement them and actualize them, like what Mr. Elon Musk is doing with his space travel ventures. And the other one is, the last one is blue ocean thinking. I'm not sure about how many of you are familiar with this concept of blue ocean thinking. Blue ocean thinking is when you sit at the ocean, you stare at the ocean, you stare at an empty space. It may be the ocean waters, it may be this blue sky, and then you think about what is possible, what is not possible, and then how to make things possible, right? Some examples that I can give you from the current scenario. This is what I mean by saying, look around you. You will see, number one, many aggregators and platforms coming into play. Your Swiggy is one good example. Your Ola is another good example. Is another example of an aggregator. Your Oyo is a good example. Oyo, if you are not familiar with it, is an aggregator of hotel rooms. So what he does is, like you have Airbnb aggregating available vacation space from homes, from accommodation, from people who are willing to rent out their homes and give you a home experience, perhaps at a much lower cost than what you would incur if you were to take up a hotel. That is the Airbnb for you. Oyo does a similar thing for hotel rooms. He takes all the empty hotel rooms available in the current hotels and then makes the information available to any traveler so that you can make a booking. Many times what happens is that you're not able to you don't know about which hotels are available, which hotels where accommodation is available, where are the hotels, and stuff like that. It may be sheer ignorance, or it may be that you're not able to reach out to them. It may be that you don't have a reference point to them. So you're not able to make sure if that is a good hotel, if there is a hotel that you want to stay in or not. So this is where people like OYO come into help. OYO aggregates all these vacant rooms, vacant hotel rooms, and makes that information available to you for booking. Okay, you all know about Swiggy, you all know about Ola, and then the other cab aggregators, right? Similarly. And if you look at the next point that I have, a lot of this is what I call as a service offerings. If you're familiar with the business world today, there are a number of things that are being made available as a service. From the concept of having to buy them, you're actually able to rent them. And the rental period can be as low as a very small unit of time or a small unit of use. You can, for instance, drive. Earlier, it used to be that you had to drive a car. If you wanted a car, you needed to sort of rent it out for half a day, a full day, for an hour or so. But now you can rent it by the mile, right? Similarly, you can rent equipment. The machinery that you see, much of the road construction machinery that you see on the roadside, parked in front of your homes, perhaps disturbing your good afternoon sleep or your relaxation period, is operating on such model. Earlier, it used to be that you had to actually buy these earth movers or whatever equipment they are, and then use them, which made it prohibitively expensive. But then somebody came with the idea of using it as a service, offering it as a service, and that is now extended to almost every kind of product or service that you can think about. There are people who are willing to store their equipment at your site, and then allow you and charge for you as per usage. One example that I can think about is the way the vaccines are actually being given out. It's not so much in terms of charging, but in terms of usage. If you would have read about it, each vaccine actually comes in doses of 10, but we are utilizing only one for each one of us. So the storage is 10 units, but we are using 1 unit each. So if we were to actually pay for it, then we would be paying only one, and then somebody else would be paying for the other 9 units. This COVID-19 situation has thrown up n number of opportunities. You must have been reading them, right from developing new drugs and new vaccines to actually to offering home care services, to nursing services, to oxygen supply services, etc., etc. Right? There are a tremendous amount of. All I'm saying is that for people who had their eyes and ears open and who were able to grasp this opportunity, I think they have made tremendous success. The example of making masks, you would have seen the advertisements, right, of very small people actually uh, converting themselves into mask making, tailoring centers. Some of them large, some of them small, some of them one-man units, so on and so forth. And it became a big business opportunity for even making these PPEs, the personal protection equipment, right? One thing that if you are serious about starting something on your own or the near future, then there is an opportunity available with the new vehicle scrappage policy that the government has just announced. It announced it about a month and a half ago. It talks about vehicles being scrapped after a certain after certain years of use, 15 years for commercial vehicles and 20 years for passenger vehicles. Now, there is a whole list of things the whole list of opportunities that I can think about right now. You need to identify that there could be a business of identifying um, these old vehicles themselves and the owners, communicating with them, getting them to actually make the change, then people willing to take over these old vehicles and then scrapping them So there will be large scrap yards, there will be large scrapping machines, and then there will be a large resale opportunity for these sorting of these scrap into different products or different components, and then making a resale of them, so on and so forth. And then, of course, there is also the opportunity for making a fresh sale of the vehicle. So you've decided to become an entrepreneur. You've decided to become a self-employed person. You've decided to become a business person, whatever it is. So you've drawn up a list of ideas. You've listened to many people. You've looked around. You've identified a few ideas. Now, what is it that you need to do in order to take this forward? You need to evaluate these ideas. Now, I'm not going to be going into the various techniques that are involved in evaluating these techniques, these ideas, but I'm going to give some kind of a rundown on what you need to do. You need to draw up a list of the criteria, what considerations you're going to have, maybe rank them. No, it is not necessary to have all the criteria having equal weights. Some of them will be more important than others, and that's where a ranking helps. Then you rate them. You rate them as, when you rank them typically as being 1, 2, 3, or list of priorities, high priority, low priority. And then you rate them saying, this is important, this is absolutely essential, it's not essential, this is a must have, this is a good to have feature, etc., etc. And then you do the scoring. At the end of it, the scores will tell you what are the ideas which are worthwhile for you to take further. You can employ professional consultants if you feel the need to. There are many of them who qualify on this specifically for helping you to identify workable ideas, evaluation of ideas. You can do a SWOT analysis. You can do what is called TRLs. TRLs are technology readiness levels. Now, if you want to identify an idea, some ideas, like for instance, you want to work on traveling to space. Now, the TRL will obviously be rather low, and you will have to work on them at its own pace. You will do a cost benefit analysis. You will see what it costs. How is the customer actually solving the problem currently? There is a cost, that there's a price that he is paying for that. And if you think that the benefits that you provide are better than what price he is paying, then bingo, you have a great business idea. And of course, you have financial analysis techniques available, most of them revolving around cash flow, then return on investment. You have DCF, that is the discounted cash flow method, then you have the runway calculations, then you have the ROI, that is the return on investment calculations. You have several techniques that are available. There are several ready-made solutions available, ready-made formulae available in order to calculate that. You don't really have to break your brain. All you have to do is to Google, and then you will get the necessary help for that. But what will help you? What is the outcome of this kind of an idea evaluation? This is to identify ideas with the highest potential and then the highest chance of success. Actually, I should have included a third point there, at the lowest risk. This is also important. Your risk-reward ratio should be equitable and it should be acceptable to you. If somebody says that you can earn lakhs of money by playing around in the stock market, well, I would suggest that you rethink, because it's possible, yes, but the risks are pretty high. Similarly, if somebody says that, yes, it's very easy to buy a lottery ticket and then you'll be able to become a multi-millionaire or a crorepati, then yes, the chances are very low, so the risks are high. So you need to rethink about that. So you will identify the ideas with the highest potential, with the highest chances of success, and possibly a manageable rate of risk. Now, why do I call this as a manageable rate of risk and not a low rate of risk? Because in no business situation will you have a zero risk situation involved. It will also help you to identify issues and areas that need more research or more information. Very often you will find that when you are trying to evaluate an idea, you'll find that you do not have enough information, and that's where you will need to spend more time. And my punchline for this particular slide is that you're waiting for the best idea trap. Like I mentioned to you, no business idea comes without any risk at all. It comes with a manageable risk. And this manageable risk is what you will need to identify, is what you will have to build for, and is what you will have to look out for when you actually freeze on idea. And when I say freeze on an idea, it doesn't necessarily have to be freeze on a single idea. Most often than not, it happens that you will draw up a short list of ideas, and then again, you will rethink about them. You will run through several other filters, and then you will come up with a idea or a couple of ideas that you will start implementing. And what is your business model? You identify, okay, let's see, where are we now? Till now, we have identified that you want to be an entrepreneur, so you've got an idea. And then what next? You need to implement these ideas. So if you need to implement these ideas, you need to have what is called as a business model in place. Now, what's a business model? I've tried to put together a very simple model of a simple chart of what is a business model. You will find that if you actually run it through Google, you'll find that there are many versions of this, much more complicated, some of them much more simplistic. But essentially what I find any organizational ecosystem or any business has is that, number one, you'll have customers. When you have customers, you will have customer segments as well. Very rarely will you find that you will have a single kind of customer. Most often, you will find that you have different customer segments. These customer segments will have different needs, will have different wants. And in order to satisfy them, you will find that you will have to deliver different value propositions. What is a value proposition? Value proposition is essentially how you satisfy a customer or a customer segment. What is the, and you're trying to solve a particular problem for him. For instance, if you take the task of a software engineer, now a software engineer can have several different things to do for different customer segments. He might be trying to solve a banking problem, banking application. He might be developing a banking application or an e-commerce transaction, facilitating an e-commerce transaction, or putting up the hardware for hardware and the infrastructure for setting up some e-commerce site, or developing a website. Okay, any one of these. This could be a business idea. This could be a customer segment. You need to understand fully who's your customer, what is the kind of value proposition that you will be able to provide to him. So you are talking about one specific component is that of the customer. The customer relationship, customer understanding is very important. Customer acquisition, customer understanding, and then customer relationship. Probably this is the logical sequence of events that happens. You identify a customer, you identify a prospect, you convert him into a customer, you understand his requirements, and then you maintain a relationship with him so that he will continue to be your customer. Now, once you've identified a customer and then a value proposition, you will have to identify how to deliver the value proposition that you have. And that's where the production and operations block comes in. You may have a factory, you may have people to deliver, you may have a supply chain, you may have timelines, you may have raw materials to procure, you may have assembly operations to do, you will have quality control tests to be done, you'll have site visits, and you'll have demos to be done with the customer, so on and so forth. All these things are part of what I call as the production and operations part. What are the key resources and activities? You need to keep a tab on them. Outsourcing is an option. Now, when you look at your business model, this is something which is new. You can look at either outsourcing it fully, or you can look at parts of it which can be outsourced. Again, for any number of business reasons or otherwise, you can think about outsourcing. It's very rarely you'll find that an organization is actually manufacturing everything end to end by itself. You need to build a robust supply chain. Much of the problems that you've been reading about COVID-19 in India, COVID-19 problems in India seems to be related to a supply chain that is not very robust and the supply chain that is broken down. Asset-light operations. But this is again related to outsourcing. What I mean by saying asset-light, there is one way in which you can actually meet a customer's requirements without actually investing a lot in yourself. If you look upon, if you look to what a trader actually does, any trading activity is an asset-light customer service involvement activity. So you have a block which talks about, which looks at customer segments. You have a block which talks about how to produce the product or the service that you have actually promised to deliver to the customer. Now, in between these two, you can also have the revenue streams, the marketing and sales. This is something which falls either in between these two or maybe outside also, because like I said, it's a constant endeavor in order to identify new customers, in order to build new customers, in order to expand your customers, in order to identify new opportunities of serving your customers. Now, when you talk about revenue streams, and then marketing and sales, well, some of the questions that you need to identify are, how is it that you're going to deliver to the customer? Is it by way of a license or a subscription fee? Here it is as a service, or what is popularly known as a freemium model. That's a free come premium model. Many of you would be very familiar with this. Most of the media sites offer you this today. They offer you a certain content which is free, and then if you want to, they whet your appetite with that. They increase your appetite for more information or more trials, and then they actually say that you have to pay if you want more. The gaming industry is very famous for this. If you want to read news, if you want to play games, or if you want to, education is another very good example where freemium works very well. They give you a certain amount of courses which are free, but then if you want more detailed information or if you want a higher level of content, then you would have to pay for that. That's the freemium model. One-time sale, would you like to sell once and for all and then be done with it? Or would you like to go for, like I said, a licensing arrangement? Volume discounting, how will you use volume discounting as a bargaining tool, as a negotiation tool? Negotiation is a very important aspect of marketing and sales. White labeling is a concept where you allow somebody else to use your technology or your product under their own brand name. In a way, it is similar to outsourcing, except that you're not outsourcing it for yourself. You're not outsourcing somebody else's production capabilities, but you're outsourcing your own production capabilities. Recently, you would have seen that Toyota and Maruti Suzuki have entered into some kind of an arrangement with this. Brezza from Maruti is being manufactured at the Toyota Bangalore production site, and they are in turn branding it as their own, as a Toyota with some changes, and then selling it as a Toyota vehicle. So white labeling is something that you can do. Barter is very common in the media industry. I have spent some time in the media industry, and I do know that this happens all the while. If you happen to have a good product, and if you want the Times of India Group to invest in you, then they have a ready offer where they will do a lot of publicity exercise for you. They will give you a lot of publicity on their websites, on their publications, in return for a slice of your company, in return for a slice of the equity of your company. Right. Now, under all this, you will need to manufacture, you will need to manage the cost structures. What resource is expensive? How do you manage costs? How do you reduce costs over a period of time? How do you make sure that the expensive activities within your manufacturing process are controlled. What are the substitute products that you can have for your, in order to ensure that expense is reduced? You have the concept of fixed and variable costs, etc., etc. So how do you make most of the fixed costs as variable costs? How do you reduce your fixed costs? So on and so forth. So this is one major component that you need to look at. Now, the fifth one, which is really, which really strikes you when you reach an entrepreneur level or the industrialist level, is that of key partnerships. Key partnerships are important right from the customer level to your marketing channels, to your suppliers, to symbiotic industry partners. This is a very interesting thing that I observed. Like I mentioned sometime earlier, many self-employed or many entrepreneurs go out of their way in order to help fellow entrepreneurs, which you will not find in the corporate world. You know, earlier on in my corporate career, in my career stages, I used to sell computers as an individual, and I used to have tie-ups with the people who sell UPS systems and the people who have tie-ups into the inverters and the UPS systems. So very often they used to give me leads, and vice versa. We used to do that all without any gratis expected, just for the sake of networking and for the sake of helping each other. So if you want to have a business plan, or if you want to have a business model, if you want to look at a business model, then you have to worry about, number one, customer segments, what is the value proposition? How will you market to them? How will you communicate to them? What is the kind of revenue models that you will have? How will you actually translate these product orders or service orders into deliverables? That is the production and the operations part of it. How will you keep your cost structures under control? What is the kind of cost structures that you will have? What is the kind of partnerships that you will have in order to ensure that you will be able to go up the entrepreneurial cycle, entrepreneurial chain? All right, what is the path to success? In terms of, I have discussed with you how to convert your urge to become an entrepreneur into an idea generation mechanism, into an idea generation scheme, and then how to shortlist the ideas, how to actually go ahead and then try to implement them. Now, these are the several stages during an implementation. First is to start with what is called an MVP, a minimum viable product. You don't have to have a product in all its full stages. You start off and then you build on that. You will identify the early adopters, people who are willing to spend time with you in developing the products. With their help, and this is what I meant earlier by saying these are the anchor customers. These anchor customers are very important customers because they help you shape your products and services into what the market demands are. So they not only give you orders, they also help you with a lot of very valuable information about what is actually the need of the hour. You use all this and then convert it to a sellable product. You get your first paying customers, then you make it into a scalable company. You scale your company into multiple geographies, multiple products, and then you develop it into an enterprise. So that's the path that I see for most entrepreneurs. Well, this is an important slide. So do we have another 5-10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
We do? Okay, fine. This is one slide that I'm very keen that you should actually, that I should go through. I realize that I'm sort of running out of time, but this is important. Now, what are the key levers? What are the things that will make you actually succeed? I just outlined a path to success for you. But are there some things which you can do in order to ensure that you go up this path on a more definitive way, in a more in a more calculated way, in a more programmed way, in a possibly with a higher chance of success, with less risks? Yes, you can do that. One is you can look at your product design, you can look at your product quality. The example that I have quoted there Apple. Apple is well known for both product design as well as for product quality, right? People swear by that. And people have continued to pay a premium for Apple products simply because of the reputation that is built in this area, right? So if you are able to build a good product, a very, very well designed product, and when I talk about design, I don't mean just in terms of aesthetics, but in terms of customer convenience, but in terms of service availability, etc., etc. The gamut of product design. Product design is not just a usability issue, but also goes much, much beyond that. Quality of service. Look at the quality of service that people like Amazon have built, and what is the expectation? People like Google, Google is a very good example of what is the kind of quality that you expect in terms of responsiveness from any website. Why is it if you actually work on banking transactions, and then if you look at the speed with which they respond to you, you'll find the websites very often do not compare very, very favorably when it comes to the websites like Google. And that's where quality of service, the technology edge comes into play. If you have a technology edge, believe me, customers will flock to you, then there's no way they can dislodge you. You are assured of success. Credibility, personal and organization. This organization will deliver what is promised. Take the Tatas as an example. The group that I was associated with and the company that I was working with, Tatas and TCS particularly. One of the reasons why TCS has a near 99% customer retention. 99% of the work comes from existing customers or thereabout, 98 to 99%. Now, why is it that this happens? Because of their tagline, deliver certainty. If TCS makes a promise, then come hell or high water, they deliver. That's why people continue to stick with that. So if you're able to do that with a high amount of credibility, if you're able to build a high amount of credibility, and this credibility is not in terms of just physical deliverable. It is also in terms of the quality. It is also in terms of financial fairness, whole sort of problem-solving approach. This is a very important thing. People have complex engineering problems that they would like you to address. People talk to companies like NASA, people talk to companies like ISRO, and then say, hey, here is a complex engineering problem. I think you guys can help us. Can you really? People talk to TCS. I have often seen that. And it's got nothing to do with software development, like writing codes of Java or writing codes of Python or whatever is the current languages. It can even be, for example, you would have seen that the Tatas have actually produced a platform for handling COVID-19 registrations for vaccines, etc., etc. Right now, that's just not coding; that's actually development of a platform, and that platform apparently is available to the governments for use. So that's the problem-solving approach that I'm talking about. It involves multiple technologies. It involves multiple people, multiple host of things, not just one area of expertise. So all these can be brought about together if you have capability to bring together a team of people, team of experts who can crack the problem for you. Then hey, you have you are on your path to success. Many consulting companies actually have this kind of an expertise. So if you have a business problem, if you have a supply problem, they'll say, hey, let's talk to McKinsey about it. Let's talk to EY about this. If you have an accounting problem, then they will say, okay, let's talk to EY about this, etc., etc. Pricing is a tool that can be used very effectively. The example that I have here is Alibaba, Hero Motors. Hero Motors today owns about 1/3 of the motorcycle market share in India and is the largest motorcycle manufacturing company in the world, possibly because of the price advantage they have, the kind of supplier network that they have, the kind of ancillary suppliers network that they have built up, and the kind of engineering skills that they have built up through these ancillary suppliers is unparalleled. And of course, the last item is It always helps if you have mentors and godfathers, especially if you are in the godfather business. I don't think I need to elaborate much on this. Just one last slide. I'll run through this very quickly. How do we tackle setbacks and headwinds? Now, like I said, the path towards becoming an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, is long, winding. It has a number of stops. So invariably, you will have setbacks. You'll have headwinds. Headwinds are those challenges which will pose an obstacle to your growth, to your plans, to your profitability, to your businesses. So one thing that you can do is to pivot. It's what is called have a business pivoting. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the concept of pivoting. Pivoting is to take a change in the direction of a business due to circumstances, maybe internal, maybe external. Maybe you lose a key internal resource. Your technology partner is no longer available to you. You're not able to work with him or her. So you have to change. Or maybe there is a pandemic situation like what is happening today, and you're forced to work from home. So how do you pivot, right? But the caveat here is that I think you should be using as much as possible of the existing facilities. It's not as if you're starting a new business. You should be trying to use as much of the same facilities as you are currently using. You may use components of the same product for building a new product. You may use the new product for building as a component for building a totally new product. You may build a new product range with the same processes. This is very common with the process industry, like for example, the chemical industry. A number of pharmaceutical giants today have turned to the specialty process industry, and a number of chemical industry have actually diversified a hell of a lot. Do you know that Asian Paints have recently got into the toilet cleansing business because they believe that they are ultimately a chemical producing company, right? Some of the other pivoting companies that I can think about is, I made a note of that somewhere. Where is it? Yes, one is Nintendo. You know, you would be knowing Nintendo as a games company, right? Electronic toys and games company. But did you know that it's originally a card selling company? They sell cards which are collectibles. But then they realized that they're actually known for as a gaming company. And then when gaming became electronic, they graduated towards successfully graduated towards becoming an electronic toys company. Airbnb, I'm not sure how many of you know about this, but Airbnb used to be a mattress selling company. They used to sell mattresses to customers who used to come to San Francisco to attend conferences because there was a huge conference facility in and around San Francisco. There was a demand for mattresses, but all of that they realized had a lot of problems, and then they realized that there was a much bigger market for affordable accommodation for a short period of time and home experience vacations. They combined the two of them to make very successful business. The last example that I have is that of Starbucks. I'm not sure how many of you know that it was actually an espresso selling espresso machine selling company. Now, when they realized that there was a bigger market for a coffee shop, an experiential coffee shop, they started that. Okay, one other way in which you can handle setbacks is to diversify. You can go to the same customer and see if you can meet more of his needs when the demand for the existing product dies down or becomes low. Adding businesses, adding products, offerings, same products, you can expand to different segments, multiple customers, and of course you have the choice of getting into unrelated businesses and segments. At this point, I think I'm finished.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll take the question and answer. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Sir,
Lovely.
I'll read out
I've
the
taken
first
1 hour and
question.
14 minutes, 1 hour and 15 minutes. I do hope that people do not doze off.
No, not at all, sir, not at all. So the first question is from Pratik Ashok. Sir, what is the course of action for a person who has identified a problem and has a working prototype to demonstrate the solution? What are the first few steps in the process to commercialization, and how can a single person go about this?
Lovely. If you refer to my slide, which talks about the path to success, Ashok, you said, right? What did you say?
Pratik Ashok.
Pratik Ashok. Right. Pratik, if you look at the slide that I have a few suggestions for you. The key thing is to identify early adopters and then see if you can sell to them or if you can actually get their feedback. Now there is a caveat to this, in the sense that there is also a fear amongst most entrepreneurs that their idea might be copied, right? After all, it's easy for somebody to call you, and then it might be a competitor who's actually calling you over for discussion. If you don't, assuming that you don't have or you have bypassed these reservations with appropriate care and precautions, you will need to talk to the early adopters. For instance, I was involved with the early development of Tally. I'm not sure how many of you know about Tally. Tally is an accounting software. It used to be an accounting software which is developed for individuals. Firstly, as an individual, I have a lot of expenses. I have some income streams. I may have income from business. I may have income from salary. I may have income from rentals. I may have income from the stock market. I may have agricultural income. So that's one part of that. I have expenses. I have expenses towards maintaining my lifestyle. I have expenses towards running my household. I have expenses towards entertainment, etc., etc. Now I need to keep track of both of these to see that I'm well within my limits, or what am I doing. So that is the Tally software that started. So initially he started off as a software for personal expense and income maintenance. Then he graduated that to small business SME segment. For business, how do you monitor costs, and how do you keep track of accounting? How do you file accounting reports? How do you file your how do you prepare your P&L? How do you prepare your balance sheets, and so on and so forth? Then you graduated to a more sophisticated enterprise level. He has now gone on to become a big ERP by itself. So what I wanted to tell you was that I was involved in the initial development as an individual user. Now, subsequent to that, when I got into an organization, I introduced him to a few of my friends who are working with the corporate sector. And one of them turned out to be an anchor customer, an early adopter, like what he's talking. So if you have some friends in your circle, if you have some relatives who are in fairly good influential positions, or if you can make use of social media. Today, social media can be a very important source of influencing. So if you can tag on to one of these influencers, I think your day is made. Does it help you, Kishore?
Yes. Sir, am I audible?
Oh, very much, very much.
Yes, sir.
Right. There are several, which is a big stock market company to invest in. Okay, I will not answer that question because this is not related to what we're discussing. But yes, can I record this lecture, please? Oh, I don't. Yes, you can. It's being done. Okay, fine. All right.
So we have from Manodnya Yarakal, who says, "Sir, how much money do we need to start and grow real estate business?"
From very minimal amount to a large amount. Very interesting that you should be talking about the real estate business. When I wanted to explain the concept of a self-employed person growing to become a business person to actually an entrepreneur, I had the real estate business in mind actually, but then I was dissuaded by my sons to give an engineering industry example. If you look at the real estate industry, people start off as what's called as realtors or real estate agents, which can be a one-man show, which can be which basically depends on on your networking skills, right? It grows into what they call as a small-time, medium, or small-time contractor, who in turn graduates to becoming a builder, who in turn becomes a builder come real estate developer. So depending on where you want to start off with, if you have a background in real estate agency, then you can jump the queue and then actually start the business of construction. Use construction as a basis for your real estate aspirations. Construction as an activity does not call for much of capital. So because much of the capital comes from the person who's actually making the building. You will have to invest a little bit, but even that will be covered to a good extent by way of advances from the customers. Does it again answer your question? Manogna.
Yes. Madhurna, you can use the chat box to reply. So we have not permitted the participants to unmute and talk.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's only through the chat box. So the next
So to
question
answer
is,
your question, Manogna,
yes.
I hope I got your name right. You can actually start off by working as a realtor to a contracting person to a building construction person to a real estate developer. And then when I talk about real estate developer, it can mean somebody who can become a person in commercial constructions or in residential construction, resort management. There are a number of opportunities available in actually management of these constructed facilities management, as it is called. That means that there is a building which is already there. It could be commercial, it could be residential, it could be a mall, and then you manage that the day-to-day operations. That is also a part of the real estate business, and that's quite popular. Yes, please, just now go ahead.
Yes. So the next question is from Athira Raj. Sir, what can be the course of action for a great idea? Worked on the prototype, providing a solution, approved by viability of the idea by many reviews. But it's not just getting there in the space the idea has to reach, no matter whatever marketing strategies we try. Basically, they've got stuck in the idea phase. Everybody says it's an awesome idea, but from there it is not going to the next level.
Oh, I can only advise a little bit of perseverance. I can advise one is perseverance. Okay, if you're convinced that the idea is really worth it, then please persevere with it. That's number one. Number two, like I mentioned when I was discussing the idea of an MVP, the minimum viable product, it is not necessary for you to have developed the idea into its fullest extent. Like, for instance, when somebody talks about developing a mall, it's not as though everybody will have the mall in place, right? You will have surrogate measures like engineers drawings. You'll have a model. You'll have several other things that will help you. You'll just have computer created diagrams in order to help you. So you can always use surrogate measures in order to identify how the idea develops. It can be in a far more primitive form compared to its final form. I mean, not everybody will have the kind of resources that Elon Musk has in order to plan space travel, right? You will need to do it you can do it in stages and phases.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is again by Pratik Ashok. How can one recruit a team without having funds to begin
with? What does it mean? What do you mean by saying a team? Is it one person? Is it two people? Is it three people?
This
If
is
it
an
is
eighth
two,
semester child.
no, I'm just asking a hypothetical question. It's more like know the answer. If the team size is small, and if there is a requirement for say one person, is a technology person, then that's a team. Right? If you require somebody who has financial resources and you'd like to bring him or her, then you have to possibly break it up into what kind of resources you need. It can always be, again, it can be done in stages. You won't require a very big financial setup if you want at the initial stages, unless it's a really great idea, unless it's a very grand idea, not a great idea, unless it's a grand idea. Most of the time you're stuck for resources like you need some technology skills, you need a place to work on, right? And by a place I don't mean a garage necessarily. I mean a factory kind of facility, in which case you can think about outsourcing your product development, right? There are any number of research organizations today, including some of the government organizations, which are willing to offer their facilities at a fee, and it will cost a fraction of the investment that you would take in order to set up full-fledged facilities of your own. If you want a working space, then there are any number of business office space availability. WeWork is a concept that has really taken off tremendously. I'm sure you can think about many such opportunities. If you're thinking about people, then yes, you need to look at maybe a stage-wise approach.
Yes. Thank you,
By
sir.
the way, one other thing that you can think about is equity sharing. There is a concept of sweat equity. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that. Sweat equity is instead of paying him money directly, you offer him a share of the company or a share of the organization that you plan to hold. Right? It could be a limited company, it could be an LLP, that is a limited liability partnership company, a share essentially in the ownership or a share in the profits. You say that let's work together. I will pay your cost now, but then I will pay you also a part of the profits as and when we make profits. This is the plan that I have. So you can enter into flexible arrangements with people and with organizations too also. But then that depends on the cloud that you're able to generate. With organizations, generally speaking, the cloud that you have will diminish because they believe that they are much stronger than you. But with individuals, if you have a friend who's like I keep coming back to the example of a technology person, it is very often a requirement that we have, or a finance person. You can always explain to him the idea. You can share your business plan with him. You can share the potential of the business in terms of what kind of revenues it can generate, what kind of profits it can generate, and then tell him that yes, I will be able to pay you only when such and such milestone happens in terms of profitability or in terms of revenue. And today, by the way, there are any number of opportunities available even to students. I'm not sure how many of you make use of it, but there are incubation labs and incubation centers available with most leading colleges and universities across the world. I'm sure that Dayanand Sagar University also has something familiar. The Indian Institute of Science has got one. The IIM has got one. The IITs have got one. Many of them, there are many individuals I know who are loaded with enough money to actually help you start up a company. They may not have enough money to help you become an entrepreneur in the strictest sense, in the sense that they may not help you to set up a 1,000 crore project, right? But startup money, you want about 5 crores, you want about 10 crores, you want about 25 crores. These are sums which are relatively easily available today compared to what it was. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So the next question is from Guru Datta. Sir, the
Mhm.
concept of lifestyle business is trending nowadays,
Mm.
wherein the attention and money required are relatively less. Some people prefer lifestyle instead of running behind money endlessly. A startup or a regular job gives control of our time to someone else. Do you also feel lifestyle business is a sustainable option over startup or regular job for those who prioritize their lifestyle above everything?
This is a difficult question for me to generalize. I would say that it depends on one's priorities. If you want to prioritize your lifestyle or a startup comes with a number of obstacles, a number of problems, a number of difficult phases in life. I think you guys would have noticed that I had an entrepreneurial stint, self-employment stint, and a businessman stint. I did have a small consulting firm with a group of friends, but I had to give that up because it did not work out well. Now, I chose to get into a corporate job because, yes, lifestyle and maintenance of the family was a definite priority for me. So, going by experience, I can say that, yes, you need to put your own personal priorities across. The second, this is actually a mixed question, the way I see it. One is you're looking at whether lifestyle needs to take precedence over the hardships involved in in entrepreneurship. I have answered that question. The second question is whether the lifestyle business itself is good enough to become an entrepreneur. Yes, why not? There are any number of companies that I can quote which are into lifestyle. Your mall construction business itself is a lifestyle business, isn't that so? Right? Your luxury. If you take the dealership of all luxury cars, there must be one or two dealers for the Audis and the Volkswagens across by a city like Bangalore or many other cities. They're all depending on lifestyle choices of customers, right? So it is possible to make a living out of a business which is into lifestyle marketing.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. The next question is from Shakti Priya. Sir, what do you think is the best strategy to stand out of crowd in a cutthroat market?
You will have to look at the slide where I talk about differentiators, right? I did speak about what are the differentiators, key levers and foundation stones, right?
Sure, sir.
My suggestion would be, if you are able to zero in on one or two or as many as you can of those foundation stones, rest assured you will have a very successful business and entrepreneurial life. It is possible. And I've given you several examples there against each one of them.
Sure, sir. Sir, the next question is by Arsal. Sir, what do you think about the influence of the ongoing pandemic on entrepreneurship? On one hand, IT industry is booming along with healthcare, etc. But what about ventures in other industries?
Yeah, other industries, yes, there may be a certain amount of constrained way. Yes, they will have to make do with whatever resources they have at present. It's not the most satisfactory of times. Definitely for many of the industries, they will have to wait until times will get better. After all, this is not going to be a permanent feature, right? It is going to get sorted out with a little bit of time. We'll have to wait for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I request Shri S. Vinod, sir, Chief Executive Officer of Atal Incubation Center, Dayanand Sagar University, to please propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, madam. And thank you, sir. So it was a very wonderful session on journey towards entrepreneurship. So where we saw the primary motivation for starting entrepreneurship, which could be either internal or external. Then we also saw how to scout for ideas and how to develop the product market fit. So it was clearly explained about the business model canvas, wherein we saw the key stakeholders, the cost structures, revenue streams, and also we saw the path to success. So how we have the early adopters, then we have multiple geographies and multiple products. So how to scale the company basically. And we also saw the key levers and foundation stones to success with very good examples like Apple, Amazon, Google, Alibaba, ISRO, NASA, and many other large corporates. So finally, we also saw how to tackle setbacks and headwinds through either pivoting or diversification. So overall, I felt that it was a very enriching session, which will definitely trigger a lot of entrepreneurship ideas amongst the participants here. So thank you, Sri Srinath sir. So it was a great session. We all enjoyed it. And I would also like to thank Honorable VC sir, Dr. KNB Murthy, who is also the chairman of BITES, which stands for Board for IT Education Standards. And I would also like to extend my thanks to Professor Arvind Srinivas sir from Mechanical Engineering Department, Dayanand Sagar University, for connecting Sri Srinath with BITES. And I would also like to thank Professor Jasma Madam for the Q&A moderation. And last but not least, Imtiaz of Dayanand Sagar University for the IT support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you for giving me a patient hearing. I see that the number of people who had logged in has not reduced to single digits, still in double digits. So happy that a lot of people spend time in listening to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.